Hello and welcome back to The Vacant Light. Today I'm continuing my review of Northern Heritage Records' Crushing the Holy Trinity compilation. And today I'm covering the second disc, which is called Sun. Now, with all the three discs on this release, there are two bands contributing material to that disc. And this particular disc has music from Musta Surma and Clandestine. Now, Musta Surma is a black metal band that has not received a whole lot of recognition, even in black metal communities and circles. Now, part of the reason for that is that this particular release from 2005 is, as far as I know, the last release where the band has actually released any material to the public. Now, even the status of the band right now, as to whether they're still together or not, is actually unknown according to a lot of my sources. So this for me is one of the main places where I have access to their music, which is pretty neat. One other interesting point I would like to mention is that Musta Surma actually appears on a split album with one of my other favorite black metal bands called Horna, and I would like to check that out and release a review of that at some point as well. So that's something I'm looking forward to listen to in the future. Now, in terms of the music on the first half of this second disc, Musta Surma basically makes old school, reasonably harsh sounding black metal. Now, the band isn't as harsh or distorted as some other bands that you will hear. The vocals themselves are pretty raspy and more in the high-pitch range, which does add a bit of aggression to the music. Now, the production itself is not really lo-fi. However, the reason I find this particular music harsh is that the guitar playing is pretty much all rhythm and groove-oriented in style. Now, with only two members of the band at this point in time, the guitar playing is all handled by one particular person. So, in light of not overproducing the album and not really double tracking a lot of the music, or any of it as far as I can tell, the guitar part is really just one guitar part. And the choice between choosing between a lead guitar part and a rhythm guitar part resulted in this particular half of the disc being essentially all rhythm based. There's no catchy lead guitar parts to be heard, and as a result of that, the guitar tone is not actually super distorted. It's harsh, but it's low, and it does generally lack any sense of melody whatsoever, which is quite interesting and distinct. Now, the bass playing on this is very minimal and does add a little bit of a richer tone, but it does not really come into the forefront of the music at any time. In terms of the rhythm, the drumming is more functional than anything. It really doesn't have a lot of fills or any really fancy work, but it does get the job done, and it's fairly aggressive. It's very difficult to describe Musta Surma's music in a way that really reveals how enjoyable it is. But the thing I find appealing about it is that the music is generally very groove oriented, and the chord progressions are quite well done, and that's really the focus of the music. It's deep in tone. It's very functional in terms of its approach. It doesn't really get out of hand with any fancy effects or really any production that's really too well defined, or too well produced, or too low in terms of production. It's generally harsh, but as a result of the musical choices, and not because of just the production of the music. So as a result, I'd like to say that Musta Surma is actually a unique band, just in the way that they almost completely ignore melody in their music, but can still be enjoyable to the listener. So I'd really like to hear more music from them in the future, and I wish that I could figure out what is happening with the band at this point in time. Now, the second band on this particular disc, as I mentioned, is Clandestine, and I am a huge fan of Clandestine music in general. Now, Clandestine only consists of one member, Mikko Aspa, who also appeared on both halves of the first disc on Crushing the Holy Trinity, and is the owner of Northern Heritage Records. Clandestine is pretty much another old school style black metal band. What I'd like to mention is that the second half of this disc does have more variety on it than the first. Now, the way the 4 tracks break down is basically the first track, the intro track, is essentially an atmospheric introduction track without any real music on it, which leads into Destroyer of the Nations. Now, Destroyer of the Nations is for me the real highlight of this entire disc, and it shows that Clandestine Blaze's music here does have more variety between the songs than Musta Surma. And Musta Surma was more consistent, but again, Clandestine Blaze, more variety. The thing I like about Destroyer of the Nations is that it really captures the general appeal of Clandestine Blaze's music, which is basically take low, very guttural vocals, take melodic yet extremely harsh guitar playing, and take a bit of functional drumming, and there you go. You have your traditional harsh and quite interesting black metal music. Now, bass playing, don't expect to hear much in terms of bass playing, at least until the subsequent track called Trophy. Trophy is actually more similar to the work from Musta Surma on this release. It is more rhythm-oriented, more deeper in tone, and very, very groove-oriented. Like, the chord progression is really what keeps that song going rather than the lead guitar part. And last but not least, the final track on this album is something that's a little more than the other tracks. Is a tribute to the early '90s sound of black metal, with its very almost Dark Throne oriented kind of guitar part, which kind of brings me to the conclusion that Clandestine Blaze, although maintaining the traditional elements of black metal on this particular release, has a good amount of variety in the subtleties between the different tracks. So overall, I'd like to conclude that the second disc of Crushing the Holy Trinity has more of a traditional black metal style than the first disc, but does a great job in capturing that sound, yet and keeping it interesting to the listener, yet not sounding overly derivative. So thanks a lot for watching this review, and expect the next disc to come soon. Thanks and goodbye.